introduce Francine. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't Francine. I'm quite concerned of that. And she is the driving force behind the Wiltshire Crop Circle Study Group since its conception, and is the driving force, the sort of research that we do and the sort of interest that we take and the shape the group has taken over the years. So it's my very great pleasure to be with Francine again this year and have you hear her speak. Francine. Thank you.
Sorry about that, little technical problems. I chose to talk to you today about the more metaphysical aspect of crop circles, but I always like to review the subject a little bit for those who are new to it. Crop circles are real, they exist, we can verify them, we can visit them, we can analyze them. And they're not just any old thing, and there have been many, many crop circles since the beginning of our studies, which was around about 1980. Many analyses have been done on the plants. In fact, when we established this group in 1995, the first thing we decided was that, well, actually I said if we didn't have the three aspects of crop circles, I was not going to drive that group, because I feel that it is important to have all these aspects. One is the physical aspect, and the other one is the metaphysical aspect, which when we go into the symbols, and the third one is the spiritual aspect, because crop circles address our spirit, our consciousness, that which animates us. It's not an intellectual study as such. So when we first established this group, we decided to support the physical aspect, and the first 2 years we collected seeds, not seeds, but we collected plants and soil to be analyzed. So we would send those following a scientific protocol given by William Levengood in America, and we collected many samples from many formations, which we sent to him to be analyzed, and then we also collected soil, which we sent to the laboratory of ADAS. Now, perhaps you don't remember ADAS, but ADAS were the laboratories from the Department of Agriculture in this country. So it was linked to the government, and most farmers would use, I think all farmers used ADAS to have their soil analyzed and their plants analyzed to find deficiencies or diseases. So we sent that to these laboratories. Of course, we didn't tell them they were crop circle samples, because it affects, belief systems. People don't realize how much their belief system affects the actions, their thought, their conclusions, etc. So we just said it was from one part of the field and the rest of the field and so on and so forth, and we gave the location. And we found it very consistently that the plants were very profoundly transformed at cellular level, and that the soil was also changed in its composition. And I have reports. We have several of these reports anyway in our archives, in our files. So it means that, and I did actually tell a farmer this week, and I wanted to take a group to a formation, and he said, they kind of verbally attack you when you present yourself at their doorstep, and he said, there is nothing greater than man. Man can do anything. So in fact, in our materialistic situation that we find ourselves in at the moment, that is materialistic mindset, we have actually deified human beings so that we can do anything, I don't think that's the case. I think we're limited. We're not on a scale of things, we are quite limited, but it is interesting that they can't see beyond that, so there's not much argument. And then I said to him, but you know, we had the plants and the soil analyzed in many formations, and he looked at me in a kind of blank way. And I said, this was sent by ADAS. You know ADAS, don't you? Of course I know ADAS. It's no longer called that now, it's DEFRA. So he said yes, and I said, and it showed that the plants were completely changed in the molecular structure and the soil as well. It was changed very profoundly. And he just looked at me and he said, no, everything can be explained by men. It's nothing that is beyond us. It's all but done by men with planks and so on. Do we believe in science? You know, if we believe that science can actually determine forces and changes in plants by looking through microscope, then we have to accept that something quite extraordinary has happened that we can't explain. We don't know how it happened, we don't know where it's coming from, but we do know that that energy that hits the plant to make the design changes the molecular structure of the plant and changes the composition of the soil. Those who believe really completely 100% in science cannot accept that, and I find that very interesting. So there is that aspect which is continuous, but the other aspect is that we're not just dealing with any old shapes. You've seen the film this morning. I was very moved by that. I think they've done something wonderful, as they do each year. And to see these shapes, one after the other, is a thing of wonder. So we can see that it's not any old shape that is being designed in the field. It's being dropped or etched in the field. They're very complex, and they do mean something. And I also agree very much with Peter that actually what they're trying to do with Crop Circle is they're working on many levels, on these 3 levels as I mentioned before. They make us want to go and visit them. So people like me spend their time the whole summer in the fields. I've seen practically every formation, and I've taken people to see them, and I've interacted with this energy the whole summer. So we are back on the land, like Peter said, and we are actually, because crop circles come near these ancient sites, always they cluster the ancient sites in this country and every country actually, in America as well. We interact with the ancient sites, we begin to ask questions, we begin to see correlations, we begin to see alignments, we begin to recognize some feelings, we begin to interact with an ancient vision. Because people who build these lines of energy right across the country had a huge vision, and we have a very narrow vision now. And you know, they were out there, they lived outside continuously. We live indoors. It is good for us to have this subject that bring us out and actually make us walk the land and make us restart to interact with the ancient monument and to become again accustomed with that kind of vision. Because if we go in an ancient monument, we go into the vision of the ancient, our ancestors. This is our heritage, you know, this is our due. We of all the races on the planet, we're the only ones that have been cut from our ancestors. We don't even know them. It's cut straight off. It's taken thousands of years, but we've been cut from our ancestors, we've been cut from their vision, and we've been cut from the earth. And we live in a kind of bubble of materialistic thinking, mostly indoors, mostly plugged into a computer or watching films. We live in a complete unreal kind of scenario, and all the while Albion is deflating. The earth is getting in a real dire strait. So we need all the help we can get. We need to understand what we're doing here, why we're here, what does it all mean? And these wondrous signs that appear all over the place, we have to start to try and understand what they mean. They are messages, they are telling us truth, they are reminding us of many truths that our ancestors knew. Recently, a friend of mine, last week actually, who is here at the moment, is from France. He had invited a Mayan elder from Guatemala who's never left his country, and he came here regarding ancient artifacts and so on. And this friend of mine showed him our calendars and several of our older calendars, and the shaman, straight off from Guatemala, never been to Europe before. When he saw these crop circle images, he went into a state of shock. He was absolutely shocked. He said, how come we don't know about these? These are the new encodement for mankind. The new encodement for the times that are coming for mankind. And he took off with all these calendars, and he said, I'm going to show all the shamans in Guatemala, and we will put our mind to it, and we will try and understand what they're trying to say. So there is that aspect that we have to try and understand what these new encodements mean. But before we do this, we are reminded, just by the fact that we're going into these fields, that we are dealing with wheat. We're going into fields of wheat, and it's not any old field. It's not, although they appear in grass sometimes, they come in wheat, and wheat is our sacred food. Wheat was a goddess, Ceres or Demeter, meaning cereals, of course, Ceres. And she was the daughter, or they were the daughters, of Gaia, the Great Mother. And therefore, wheat is godly, is our most precious food. Somebody told me that wheat, as it was in the past, not now. Now wheat is a poison for some people. It's not wheat that's the poison, it's everything they put on it. It's all the manipulation that goes into it. It's the bad quality of the soil and so on. But wheat in a good soil, and the old strains of wheat, in the times of Demeter, for example, in the times of the Greeks and so on, is the food that is the closest to the composition of our blood. You can live just with wheat and water. You can live. It's a pain quotidien, we say in French. It's your daily bread. You can have a little bit of, you have wheat 3 times a day with a little bit of something else, and you're very healthy, because wheat is the best food for us, but not the modern wheat, but the old one. So they're bringing us back in the field as well. So every day I'm going into a field of wheat, of this wonderful cereal. So it reminds us of this as well. So it's working on many, many levels. And then, of course, we have the symbols in the crop circles. It's not any old symbol, it's the circle. And the circle is the highest symbol of all, according to all the traditions, including the Western tradition in the past. Because all the ancient thought that the circle, because it has no beginning and no end, represents the whole, represents everything, the universe, everything. It has no beginning and no end. And because it is empty, it can contain everything. It's the old story of the Zen master who says, if your cup is full of tea, I can't pour any more in it. I can't pour anything in it. So it's got to be empty. The empty circle has the potential of everything. And in actual fact, sacred geometry is merely, it all comes from the circle, is merely about the division of the circle. For example, you can get a square and so on, and a triangle. So the circle is beginning of everything. If you think about it, the earth is circular. Sun is circular. We come from a circular egg that has been activated, but everything begins from a circle. So to have a teaching sent from, I don't know, but from a higher level of understanding, a very high level of understanding, to be sent in fields of wheat, our sacred food, bringing us back into the field, and based on the circle, is already a very high level. We're talking about, an important teaching that is based on a high level. So there are many, many symbols in crop circles. There have been thousands and thousands of them, and they all come in different shapes. They never repeat, so they're different, but they seem to fall into categories. And I've seen several lines of symbols over the years, and I've been sort of putting them into categories and so on. And you can see that the train of thought is developed over the years by studying these particular lines of symbol. And one line of symbol is the division of the circle. Here you can see that the circle has kind of doubled itself and creating a Vesca Piscis here. So the division of the circle can start there actually, at the Vesca Piscis. And then here you have an example. You have quite a clear example of the Vesca Piscis here. The Vesca Piscis is a sacred symbol. It's what Peter was referring as the vulva of the mother of Gaia. But it's not just, it's a yoni. In India they call it yoni. It's still a sacred symbol there. It is not just in India. In India it's called a yoni, but it is used in every tradition, every ancient tradition, including in the Christian one. And you often see these shapes in cathedrals. I mean, there's a famous one where Christ is sitting in this yoni shape, you know, as a savior, as a god, really, because it represents life. It's from, it is the symbol of the shape of creation, actually, because the all ancients saw that everything was the same at every level. So if human beings and animals come from a female principle of a vulva, a female principle, a yoni, then the universe would have been on the same level. It would have come from that shape. That's symbolically speaking. That is, it's coming through a female principle into the materiality. So there is a line of Vesca Piscis which come very often. And then we have the circle divided into 3, into 4, and we have had many like that. Everyone, I can't really tell you what they every time what they mean, because you know the division of a circle in 4 it relates to materiality and materially within spirituality and so on, and it is quite a long. It takes time to do that. So I'm just showing you examples of the symbol of the circle divided into 4, and there have been many such examples. And then divided into 5 with the pentagon and the pentagram, the pentagram and the pentagon. And I think the pentagon and the pentagram is the equivalent to the yin and yang of the Chinese tradition. You have the female aspect is the pentagram, and the male aspect is the pentagon, the outer, the inner, the dark and the light, and so on. And here you have it's put into a lotus. And a lotus, of course, is an Indian symbol that represents the ability to reach higher level, because a lotus grows in mud and finds its way through very thick water, and then eventually opens up into the air to the sun and rises to the heaven, actually. So that's why the Buddha were represented sitting in a lotus. So it is a sign of enlightenment. And here you have the pentagon here, and the invisible pentagram and the invisible pentagon here. So to me that indicates harmony between the two aspects, male and female, yin and yang, gives you the possibility of achieving a higher level of understanding. Then you have the circle divided into 6. Now we have many of hexagram in, I would call it, Peter Knight calls it hexagram, and I would call it a Star of David. I'm more plugged into the ancient way of saying things, but that is a Star of David here, and the Star of David is a profound teaching in itself. So that is an example of that. And then we have the circle divided into 7, another one into 7. Here we have an 8 divided into 2, 4, 9, 10, 11. and so on. And there are many examples of that. So that is an ongoing kind of line of symbol that almost every year we have an example of, so which can slot into that. When you put them all together, you begin to be able to read this. I've forgotten to tell you a bit about symbols, actually. A symbol is simply a means of transmitting knowledge. Everything we say is symbolic, actually. Even the language is symbolic. Everything we write with symbols. Even mathematics is symbolic. It's symbolic of something else. It's not the thing, you know. And so we have to, in order to understand symbols, we have to learn about symbols, because like any language, it has to be learned before we can use it, because before we can access it. So the crop circles are symbolic. They give us shapes that mean something else. And the property, that's a French word, sorry. One of the characteristics of a symbol is that it goes to infinity. It goes to infinity. There's no end to it. You can spend a whole life studying a pentagram. And the reason it goes to infinity is that we can always go deeper in our understanding, you see. So you think you understand. So it's like reading a book. You read a book that has a profound book. You read it. A year later, you read it again, and you think it's the first time you read it. And 2 years later, you read it again, you realize you'd missed half of it, and so on and so forth. Because as we begin to juggle with these ideas, we grasp what they mean a bit, and then that opens another door, and then we go a bit deeper into it, and there's no end to our possibility of deepening a subject. So it goes to infinity, therefore. Never ends. So a line of symbol that is interesting as well in crop circle is that they are absolutely straight off ancient symbols, like the candelabra here, which relates to the tree of life and to the Kabbalah, although it has a different base than a traditional one, and here it's got a trident symbol here. So it's a combination of symbols, but it is possible to recognize those because they are well-known symbols, and they're old ones that have been studied for thousands of years. The winged disc is another ancient symbol that is recurrent in crop circles in many forms. The stars and the planets, we've had lots of information on that. This is a symbol that actually represents the Native American knowledge, the medicine wheel. You see a symbol, I often say that about this one, because it's deceptively simple. You have a ring and a center like that, and it's a medicine wheel. Well, actually it contains all the understanding of the American Indian, the medicine wheel. It's very profound. It has much to tell us and much to tell them. So although it looks simple, it's profound. And then we have had a lot of playing with the square and the circle, because in symbology or symbolism, if the circle represents the universe, no beginning and no end, it represents spirit, it represents spirituality. When you start to divide that circle, and you find the north, south, east, west, and you follow the lines, it gives you a square, and then the square represents materiality, because it's limited. It has a beginning and an end, and it is limited by the circle. So the square and the circle, they play a lot with in the crop circle. We have many, many examples. And it is very fascinating. So here you have a cube that's been opened up, And that is a square in 3 dimensions. So you have if you fold that, you'll get a perfect cube. In fact, we did it the year it happened. For our Christmas edition of the Spiral, we provided a little cardboard model of this with all the lines and the drawing and everything, with dotted lines saying fold here, so that people could make a little Christmas decoration for their tree. And it makes a perfect cube. And that was about 500 feet across. It was a massive formation at West Overton. And then a few weeks later, we had the cube. So here you have again the circle, and you have the square inside in 3 dimensions, which is a cube. Now then, to me, that represents the earth level, the physical manifestation of life in the cosmos. And it's in 3D, but it is definitely a square in 3 dimensions, which is a cube. It's also a Reiki symbol. And some people came from America, some women came from California when they saw this formation and spent 4 days in it entirely. I don't know how they managed, but I suppose they went out sometime. But they didn't look at any other design, and after 4 days they went back to America. And there were loads of other crop circles, but that's the one they liked. But it's very interesting. No. Peter, what's happened? As crop circle, so harmless, doesn't harm the plant, doesn't harm anything, doesn't harm anybody, that gives us knowledge in a very gentle way, scares so many people. What's going on? Look, it's just not coming back on. You know, and I asked permission to go in his field. He could not accept that science could have found, he could not even hear me when I said the plants have been analyzed by ADAS. The soil has been analyzed by ADAS, and it's changed. It's not the same thing now. Your plants are no longer the same. They don't respond the same way. They won't grow in the same, in sort of the crop circle seeds and so on. How can he not take that in? I was very, very interested in that, you know. I'm saying, I'm talking science here, and you can't take it in. Now, who is Airy Fairy? You know, we're basing this on some pretty strong studies. And it gets back to this idea that that we only accept what we believe in. You know, he believes in that there is nothing else than the physical world, that science has all the answers, but when it has the answers he doesn't like, he doesn't hear it. And evidence counts for nothing. It really doesn't. He just couldn't get his head around it at all. Their change in the cellular structure is change in the, well, you'd have to read the report from Levengood actually, but it shows that the plants have been heated from the inside, and they have they've changed their composition. It's no longer the same thing. They don't grow the same way. They don't germinate in the same way. Go to BLT research and find it. It will tell you. It will give you all the analysis of it. There's different components in it that don't exist in the plants and the rest of the field. When I say analyze, is that when we do the analysis, we hang on a sec, let me get this back to where I was now. We take plants from the crop circle, and then we, oh God, now I'm giving my lecture away now. It's hopeless. Give me a hand now. I'm in the squares now. I don't know. Slideshow. Slideshow from the beginning. Current slide. No, that's the last one, isn't it? Okay. This? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Karen, come on. Yeah. 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 Okay. When we take samples from the crop circles, and we have to take it from a scientific protocol. In other words, you have to align it on the cardinal points, and then you have to show where you've taken the samples, and we would take them every 3 feet. And we would start at the beginning of the inside the formation. We'd take the whole formation, north, side, east, west, and it's all marked on a piece of paper. And then we go outside, and we go up to 300 feet outside the formation, again in a straight line, north, south, and east, west. And then we label all these samples, and we we dry them, and then we send them to be analyzed. So we find that up to 300 feet, what they find is that the plants in the center of the formation have been more affected, and the further out you go, the less affected they are. But sometimes, in very large formation, we had to go even further out than 300 feet because the energy spills out into the rest of the field. And when you plant these fields, they don't grow in the same way. They don't germinate at the same speed, and they don't produce the same kind of plants. The plants are from the formation tend to grow bigger and taller and stronger. Not always. Sometimes when the plant was very young, it may have the adverse effect. But when it comes in seeds that had already taken shape and were already established, it tends to enhance the plant. And the soil, we do the same. So we would take the plants and then soil, and the soil we could only really go down to about a foot because we're not equipped to go deeper than that. But the soil was also seen to have changed its composition and had become more fertile. And when I asked the scientists what could could actually change something like that. He said, it is as if it had been hit directly by a bolt of lightning. And you know that a bolt of lightning will change the composition of the soil. If we didn't have electrical storms, there wouldn't be much fertility on the planet. But the lightning brings fertility to the soil, and they find that in the crop circle, the soil shows a heightening of fertility, and plants tend to grow differently where crop circle have appeared. And I've been told that by a farmer as well, who was actually farmer's wife, who was actually quite angry about it. But she said that the plants never grow the same way, even after 13 years, which was the period of time they'd had crop circle on their land. So it seems to be a permanent change. And as far as I can see, it is a beneficial, on the whole, is beneficial to the plants and species and to the soil. So that is perfectly has been demonstrated by the various laboratories that have done these analyses. So that's what I mean by the changes in the soil. But if you read the report, it will give you precisely the chemical components and so on and so forth. And I'm not versed in science enough, but I've done these, we did that for 2 years, and I can tell you that the reports are quite conclusive. So when you present a farmer with these facts, it seems to me common sense that he would take notice and he would accept and he would try to find out. But on the contrary, he was not able to accept it. So generally speaking, they're not able to accept it because it contradicts the belief that crop circles are made by men. That's why they can't accept it. And men can't change the composition of the soil. When this woman told me that's the reason she hates crop circles, because the plants never grow the same way, I then said to her, that's your proof. Because men can't do this. They can't do that. So that is not at our level. Something is happening at a different level. We don't know what it is, but it is not on the level of men with planks going to have a joke after a few beers and you know, at the pub at night. So to get back to the more metaphysical aspect, is that not only does it act on the soil, and not only does it act on the plant in the way that I've just described. And believe me, there's lots of plants that were sent to be analyzed in the early years, and there's been thousands and thousands of plants analyzed from hundreds of formations, not just in England, in Canada, in America, and other parts of the world where people have sent the stuff to the scientists concerned. But not only is there this aspect, but what I'm trying to convey to you is that these shapes are not just any old shape, but they are very intelligent shapes, in the sense that they have specific design that convey information at a level that is quite profound, and they're using every kind of tradition on this planet to pass on the information. So I see ancient knowledge because it's something I've always been interested in, and I've studied symbology for some time when I was in London, and I had already a base, and I feel that I can relate quite well. Other people are more into sacred geometry, the division of the circle, and they can see that kind of, well, it is expressed with, it is actually expressed with sacred geometry, crop circles, mostly. And therefore, we're able to read it from that. Other people have told me, a Chinese Tao master actually has told me that all the crop circles he can read from the point of view of Chinese knowledge. He says all the ancient knowledge of China, all the traditional knowledge of Chinese traditional knowledge is expressed in crop circles. Now, I can't see that because I don't have that knowledge. American Indians will tell us that they see American Indian knowledge in the crop circles. The Mayan elder who was here recently, the shaman, he said there are new codes, but he recognizes some of the teaching of the ancient Mayans. So we only see what we know already. So people who see nothing in crop circles is because they know nothing. It's very simple. Because to know something, to recognize something, you have to already cognize it. In French, it's even better. Connaître is to know. Reconnaître is to recognize, is to know. You can only recognize if you know it already. How could you recognize something you don't know? And therefore, I'm trying to convey that there is a lot of knowledge in the crop circles. It is recognizable, but we have to have a base. And the crop circles are actually teaching us a base. They're teaching us about sacred geometry. They're reminding us of our ancient knowledge which existed here. And Peter talked about ancient knowledge for an hour this morning. The way these lines were constructed, they were constructed by men. You know, our ancestors understood these lines. They understood the lines of energy. They could sense them, they could measure them, and they constructed to actually set into the land these sacred shapes, which we are now able to walk on. And the crop circle are bringing us right there. They're not happening anywhere else than on sacred land. And therefore it's bringing a lot of people back into nature and a lot of people back to the ancient sacred site in the land which actually contain the ancient knowledge. And ancient knowledge is the knowledge that goes back to the source. That's the word of sorcerer. It's someone who has the knowledge from the source, the really old knowledge that goes right back to the source of life, the source of the beginning, you know, the principles that support the universe. The principles that support our material reality. That is knowledge. That's what the mathematicians are looking for, actually. They're also using a kind of symbolic language. If you describe something mathematically, it's a form of symbol, actually, and it's quite hermetic. We can't enter that. I can't. You can't talk to a top mathematician who's describing laws of the universe using mathematics and understand his equations. Well, I can't. And there's very few people who can. There's like a little club at the top who can use that language. The ancient had a language that was symbolic, that described the same laws using more simple symbols. And this, for example, is an example. This is an example of it. You have the circle, which represents the universe, the spiritual aspect, the non-created, the principles and the concept behind reality. And we have that if you put this circle in space, you have north, south, east, west, which will give you a square. And if you have this square in 3 dimensions, you have a cube. So this actually represents our reality. We're limited by the circle. We come from the spirit, but in that has expressed itself, materialized in reality. And it's in 3 dimensions, it's a cube. And within that cube is also spirit. Do you get me? It's very simple, it's very easy to understand this. And because we always think that in materiality there's no spirituality. Spirituality, by the way, just to be clear, does not mean sentimentality, and it does not mean religious. It just means it pertains to the spirit, or to the life force, that which animates us and animates everything else in the universe. That is spirit. Permeates everything. So it permeates, it actually, the material world is actually like frozen spirit. It's spirit that's become solid. But actually, if you go down in scale, you will see that a human body has more space in it than matter. That's a fact. We're actually we're like a universe in ourselves, really. It's not stuck together. It feels like that, but nothing is solid. You know that. We learned that at college and things. But crop circle then use this ancient way of describing things. If we understand that's the universe, this is the earth, inside the earth there is also spirit, inside ourselves, inside anything material there's also spirit, and there's a bridge between the two. So we can access from within and from without. That again is playing with cube and playing with circle and with squares. And I see this as, you have here a 12-pointed star, so 2 times 6, 6 is as above, so below, 6-pointed star. And from here you have things that are, some people call that like New York or something. They saw it at 9/11 or something like that. But it does look a bit like a building. It does look like a modern city. But here, what it tells me, particularly me personally, is that from that very spiritual basis of 2 stars of David can come a material world, squares material world based on a spiritual understanding. In other words, what we have here at the moment, what we're experiencing now in our time now, is a material world that's based on material understanding. Yeah? Mechanistic understanding. Science tries to understand the mechanics of things, mostly. I'm not talking about quantum physics and so on. I'm talking about Euclidean kind of materialistic kind of science that looks after mechanical laws, try to find the mechanical behind the living world, which of course exists. But we have created a mechanical world, materialistic world, that is actually existing in a spiritual reality, if you see what I mean. Because in a living reality. So we're trying to impose a mechanical system on a living system, and it doesn't work any more than trying to force a square peg into a round hole. That's a very good analogy, because the square is material and the round is spiritual, if you see what I mean. So what this crop circle here tells me is that we can very well create a civilization, a system of being on this planet that goes with the laws of nature, that does not harm the living world, because it is based on a spiritual understanding as opposed to a mechanical understanding. Do you understand what I'm saying? I've been saying it in French the whole summer. I'm finding it difficult to say it in English now. We can only hurt the planet if we persist with a mechanical approach, because it's like pushing a square peg in a round hole. It does not work. We have to take into consideration life and consciousness and spirit, which is spirit. Life and consciousness is what I mean by spirit. And create a kind of civilization that goes with that flow and not against it. Because if we try to go against it all the time, we only get to destroy it. And look what's happening on the planet. We're destroying the planet because of our materialistic approach. And the crop circles are giving us other options by putting us back to this ancient knowledge of going with the planet, going with the flow, fitting in with the system, putting a round peg in a round hole, and everything works well. And everything is flourishing. I see that's what they are telling us. And they play a lot with the square and the circle. And here is a good example. You have the circle here, spiritual aspect. You have the 4 direction, north, south, east, west. And here you have your square from that, because if you join the 4 direction, it goes into matter. And you have here a representation of the earth, of the level of the material level. But here, look what they're doing. By using just straight lines, they are making the square more circular. So that, to me, is an invitation to round up our sharp corners in our mind and in reality, so that we go with the flow. So we make our material reality less rigid, more supple, and it fits in with the flow of the universe. And therefore, everything is fine. And there are many examples of rounding off your corners. Look at this. We call that the Celtic rope, you see. But the square is getting rounder, and that can be done at many levels. We can be applied at many levels. Another rounded up square into a circle. But this one, to me, is the best example of all. And I was discussing that with Alton Barnes one day, and we were laughing on the telephone because he said, this is a cosmic joke. And I see it like that as well, because, you know, if you think of the square being rigid and within a circle, and also the expression of squaring the circle, you know, the very expression squaring the circle is to equalize the circle with the square, but it implies a rigidity. You're squaring a circle, and in here, you're rounding up a square. See? The square is made entirely of circle. And what do we find? These symbols here? This is a symbol of the lotus. So if you round up the square, you will have the possibility of achieving a higher level. You will be able to raise, you'll be able to rise, you'll be able to go higher in your understanding. And when we are high on in our understanding, we tend to want to go with the flow of things. We're less rigid. That's a very good, to me, I find that quite interesting. You know, A, it's funny, B, it's hopeful, and it is a very interesting way of describing the square, which is not often seen. Then, of course, there is a lot of attention to ancient knowledge. Here with this pyramid, with the flower of life, the seed of life. And I don't know if you know, but a few years ago at Kew Garden there was a crop circle. And the crop circle that came at Kew Garden was the seed of life. And it was in a part of Kew Garden where they kept aside to grow old wheat, interestingly enough. Old wheat, medieval wheat that actually grows 6 foot tall and has several stems. It's not one stem, the old wheat, it had several shoots. They had set aside a place and they grew that, and there were wildflowers and so on and so forth. And one day, a crop circle, the seed of life, appears bang in that field at Kew Garden. And what did they do? They said that maybe there were some hedgehogs running around in the field. You don't know that old chestnut, do you? In the 80s, people thought crop circles were made by hedgehogs. In heat, running after one another, trying to catch one another. Yes, it's funny. Or they said maybe there had been a gust of wind that had done that beautiful flower of life. And then finally they said, well, maybe it's men with planks. But at Kew Gardens, you've got very high walls and you've got, you know, security and so on. It wasn't nothing of this, but they did not photograph it. And when I rang to see if we could get some seeds, they said not really. And were they going to do some analysis on the plants? They said no, they wouldn't. So they were not interested in the slightest. And there again, do you know, I mean, how more direct can they be that to put a seed of life in old wheat in Kew Gardens in London, the place where they study wheat, where they study plants and where they could have analyzed and everything. You see the closeness of mind. It's quite amazing. So they're insistent on that. They're also sometimes crop circle quite au fait with actuality, and they do give us warnings. So it's not always on very high level. Sometimes it's very practical. I think this is we all saw that as dolphins, and this here looks like a little bit like a kind of explosion, and it appeared at a time when there were some experiments being done in the sea by the armies of this world, and they're trying a new weapon or something, and it was causing some very damaging waves that were affecting the dolphins and the whales in a very bad way. And that was sort of, it happened at around about the same time. So they actually, to me, crop circles are trying to give us things to think about, you know, whether it's actual. And in fact, if you follow the crop circle, you find out a lot more about the world and what's going on than if you read the newspaper, I think. Here again, the whales and the cetacea, all the whales and the dolphins are quite prominent with the crop circles, or at least we've had a series of them. And to me, it makes us think about our oceans, that our oceans are in a really bad state at the moment. You know, because we're on a mechanistic way of thinking, And most people, the thing uppermost in their mind is to be more efficient, make better money, better ways of making a profit, and being efficient at what we do. And with computers, of course, it's really given us a very powerful tool to achieve that. So people then use it for fishing, for example, and they will follow shoals of fish on the computer coming from satellites and so on. So the poor fish have nowhere to hide anymore. And the seas are being fished to extinction, in actual fact. They're turning into desert. You have a part of the ocean, which is this apparently, and I've seen it on the internet, it's pretty scary, the size of France, which is a kind of vortex of plastic bags. And that breaks down, and the animals, when they eat, they swallow that, it goes into their stomach, it's causing havoc. And the sea is in a dire strait at the moment. It's very, very serious. We don't realize it is very serious at every level and in every aspect of life on our planet at the moment, because we're like a kind of train going, 300 miles an hour, full speed ahead, trying to extract as much as possible from the earth, thinking that the earth is probably, the earth is not a living being. Most people don't realize the earth is a living being. They think it's dead, and therefore it doesn't matter if you cut all the trees, if you fish all the fish, it doesn't matter because it's dead anyway. It's not dead. It's as living as we are living. It's conscious, it's a higher being. We're part of the earth. We are the earth, actually. We are the earth. We are cells of the earth. The only reason we don't think we are is because we move about on two legs. And we're mobile, so we think we're detached. We're not detached. We can't live without the earth. We can't live anywhere else than the earth, unless we would do some very, very drastic, what's the word, intervention into our system. We'd have to graft ourselves on the native forms of life to start living in another planet. We can't do that as we are. We are of the earth. We have the same DNA as the earth, the same minerals and materials as the earth. We are cells of the planet. And without the planet, we're nothing. Really. If the planet dies, we're finished. Just like if we die, if I die, my cells will die with me. You can't have a little living cell in a cadaver in a cemetery. The body is dead, there's a little cell there saying, I'm alive. It doesn't work like this. We're part of a system that is alive, not just the earth, but the whole universe is a living body. And if we destroy our planet, we destroy ourselves. We're like, at the moment, I'm afraid to say, we're like cancerous cells. We don't like the system. We want to exploit the planet. We want to use the planet for our own benefit, and we think we're clever. We're not clever. We're destroying the body that we depend on. Well, we're part of the body. We're destroying our own body. I suppose if you went to tell a cancerous cell, if you're successful, the body will die and you'll go with it. They'll say, oh, come on. Are you one of those who want to go back to nature? I was told that once. Are you one of those who want to go back to nature? I was absolutely shocked by this. I looked at the man and I said, we are nature. You can't live outside nature, mate. You can't. But people think they do, and that's what the mechanistic thing is. We feel disconnected, we don't know where we live, we don't question what we do, and we exploit the resources of the planet, and that's become like a religion, and everybody is speeding up to do it with the new technology and so on and so forth. And in the meantime, our poor planet is in a dire strait, and as Peter said, she won't die, but we will go if we carry on like that. So in my view, and he sees that in what he does, and I think that's very interesting because they're very linked with the crop circles, you see. He brings people back to the sacred site, brings people back, they walk the lines of energy, and it's a fantastic thing to do. And I do it. I spend my whole summer outside now just going to sacred site and crop circles, which are very linked actually. And I see, I really feel that it brings you to life when you do that, and it's wonderful. Anyway, to get back to crop circles, I think crop circles are really knocking at our door and saying, you know, think of this, study this, realize that. This is what you need to think about constantly. They're reminding us on 2 minutes. One of the symbol that I really value is this spider's web that came at Avebury. I think it was 96 or 95, I can't remember now. But this is a symbol of the universe. This is a symbol that indigenous people use a lot in the drawings in the cave when they draw these symbols, and it's been seen. I've seen that in Aboriginal and American Indian artwork, rock work, and this is actually a representation of a spider's web, and the spider's web to them is the representation of the universe. That's how they show the universe, because they see the universe as being one, totally connected, very big. You know, if you think of a big spider's web and a tiny little spider, it's very big. The little spider is there, and the characteristic of the spider's web is that it looks strong, but it isn't that strong. And wherever the fly lands, doesn't matter which part of the web, the spider will feel it. And that's why all ancient civilization, all ancient culture, I would say more civilization, all ancient cultures that are close to the earth will tell you, will say the same. The Kogi Indians in South America say the same, that the universe is fragile. Our world is fragile, and we have to keep it by revering it. We have to keep it in good health by revering it and looking after it, and we have to be walking lightly on the surface of the earth. And they see the whole universe is like that. So if one part of the universe is in distress, like the earth must be screaming her head off in the universe, the whole web will feel it. And I think that's why there is an intervention here. Peter seems to think that it's coming from the planet. For me, I feel it's coming from the universal consciousness, that they are trying to help the earth to revive and to get better, and at the same time they're trying to give us the knowledge to change our vision, because it is our vision that makes us behave the way we do. You know, I'm telling you about the farmer. I'm giving him facts like this, and he's going, no, it's man-made. Even ADAS is not convinced, and yet he uses them for his own analysis of his own plants. So when we change our vision to a more holistic vision, to a more spiritual, in the sense that we care for the spirit, which is the animation, the life, that's what it means, spirit is life, animating principle. If we develop a vision that is based on life, we will enhance the planet. That's the difference. If we have a vision that's based on mechanics and greed, that's a terrible combination, will destroy the planet. So the crop circles, you know, the cosmos is thinking, what are we going to do to get these guys to listen? I know we'll bombard them with the most wonderful designs in their field, a sacred field of wheat, and they'll go there and they'll be filled with wonders, and it'll give them a different vision, and suddenly they will have a different way of seeing things, and they will do things differently, and all will be well, and they'll get back to normal. But nobody listens, except us. It's terrible, really. I find that quite depressing, that there's so little, is that my time now? Anyway, we'll leave it to there, that as far as I can see, and I've studied this now for many, many years, and I'm always in there, crop circles are here to wake us up. They're here to give us an opportunity to change our vision, and they're giving us this opportunity by sending us very beautiful patterns that contain knowledge that we need at the moment for the new age that is coming. Thank you.